Hello everybody, I am Tom and you are watching me play PoE2. Kind of. So Path of Exile 2's latest expansion, the Third Edict, has just had its reveal stream. In this video, I'll walk through the most important details so that you know exactly what to expect when you're coming into the launch. For the TLDR, if you just want the quick version, the Third Edict adds Act 4, a brand new Interlude which will replace the Cruel difficulty. It's introducing the Abyss League mechanic, overhauling support gems and adding to the crafting system. We're expanding the endgame with 25 new maps, and we're bringing along the very highly anticipated asynchronous trading, so you'll be able to trade when you're not online. And this all arrives with a free weekend starting on the August 29th. So the expansion launches on Friday the 29th at 1 PM Pacific, and GGG is also running a free-to-play weekend. It starts at the launch and it goes till September 1st, which means anyone can try Path of Exile 2 without actually buying the early access package. One of the biggest additions for this patch is Act 4, the newest act added into the main story. This is set in the Karui Shores, and it's made up of 8 different islands that you can actually do in any order, so you don't have to do it linearly. You can choose whatever island you want to go to and you can do them in any order. It's going to feature new monsters and bosses, all that kind of stuff that you expect from a new story act. They're also removing Cruel difficulty entirely. Instead, once you finish the campaign, i.e. Act 4, you'll move on to the new 3-part Interlude, and it bridges directly into the endgame, so you won't need to play the campaign again. It's worth noting that in the Ziggy D interview, it was noted that these interludes, just like with Act 4, you can also do them in just any order you wish. There's no linear order to them. Each of the stories is a linear story, but you don't have to do them in order. You can do 1, 2, or 3 in any order you wish. They've done some updates to movement and combat. Notably, to the movement system, they've added sprint, which is interesting. So the way it works is you roll, and then if you hold the roll button afterwards, you'll sprint, which will make you go much faster. There is a drawback, however. If you're hit while you're sprinting, you'll get knocked down and you'll suffer from a heavy stun, which is pretty much death, let's be honest. If you get heavy stunned, you die. So it's designed to be used out of combat and kind of running between packs, or notably in a boss fight to try and avoid a slam or something. But obviously it's going to be riskier if you're using it in a boss fight, because if you get heavy stunned, you're just dead. Also, if you use this when you're trying to like run past a group of enemies, I think you're likely just going to get yourself killed, because one hit heavy stuns you. There's also a new defensive mechanic called Deflection. So the way Deflection works is kind of like a partial block. Instead of completely avoiding the hit, Deflection reduces the impact by 40%, and that can scale to 100%, so you can have a full uptime on that. In many ways, it feels similar to spell suppression from Path of Exile 1, except 1, it applies to all damage types, not just spells. And what's important though, and what separates it, is that Deflection is tied directly to your evasion rating. So it won't feel mandatory, in fact you won't even consider it if you're doing an armor or an energy shield archetype. Spell suppression in PoE1, a lot of the time you feel like, well, I could go over here and take suppression, and that's even more defensive layers, you know? Even if you're playing like a Templar. Like there are Templars that take suppression, it's ridiculous. Another defensive change is to armor. Previously, armor was mainly only effective against physical hits. Now armor can gain mods through both gear and on the passive tree that allows a portion of your armor to reduce the effect of elemental damage as well. To a lesser degree than it does physical, it's only a portion of your armor applying to the elemental hit, but that's still kind of huge. We'll see if it's enough, My impression is that these changes together are going to make a healthier kind of defensive landscape. Evasion gains deflection now, and armor has some more elemental mitigation, and ES is always good. Also worth noting that in the Ziggy D interview, it sounds like they are nerfing energy shield, kind of. It's being reworked at the very least. They're now focusing mainly on energy shield regeneration as your way to recover ES. Other recovery methods, like those kind of tricks to get like instant recharge on your energy shield, are all being, seemingly all of them removed. They're just nuking it entirely. But they've said that ES regen is going to be easier to get. But all the other recovery options are just gone. They're nuked out of existence. So my assumption is ES characters will sustain more smoothly over time now, but they're not going to have that burst recovery that they used to do, so maybe they'll be pulled a bit more into line as well. I'm not entirely sure if the armor changes will be enough to make me personally like using armor. It always felt underwhelming to me in PoE2, and it might take more than this buff to sell me. I don't know, we'll have to see. It's one of those things where you have to test it in game to be able to tell properly. Next we have the support gems. So support gems are seeing a complete rework. The biggest change is that the old limit on how many support gems you could have on a single skill is now being completely removed. This cap felt restrictive all the time, I got their idea behind it. They didn't want you to use the same 5 support gems on every single skill. The issue with that is that what this restriction actually did, rather than making a limited number of support gems that are being used, it turned it into the fact where nobody was using more, like their active gems were being limited instead, which is, it feels worse. I'm just saying, it feels worse. With that limit gone, it opens up for way more creative builds. I'm expecting to see some more interesting stuff come out of this league than pretty much any other release they've done so far for PoE2. On top of this, supports now come in tiered versions that grow stronger as you progress. So a lot of those tier 1 support gems now have a tier 2 and sometimes even a tier 3 version. So you can actually upgrade them as you go. It's not one of those ones where you kind of just slot it in and never think about it again. Which is really nice. And finally, they're adding a thing called lineage gems. So these only exist in the endgame, they're dropped by bosses, and they're unique gems, essentially. These do still have the limit of 1 gem per skill. So if you have a particular lineage gem in one of your skills, you can't put the same one in other skills, so it has the old limit. But these are far more identity shaping rather than just buffs like regular support gems. We're also getting a refresh to the crafting system. Base items, they're going to be sometimes dropping exceptional base items. These can be like 30% quality, sometimes they come with an extra socket. Interesting, I'll say that. Tiered currency items, reworking essences, but they're also adding Hinokora's locks, which is really cool. So for those who didn't play Path of Exile 1, Hinokora's locks are a special currency item that let you peek at the possible outcomes of a crafting before you actually do it. So in other words, they completely eliminate the risk of doing a random slam on an item. You can look exactly and tell, this is what I'm going to get when I do this, and you can choose to do it or not. So it takes away that blind gamble and adds some strategy to the really high tier crafting. However, based on what they're like in PoE1, it's safe to assume that they're going to be very, very rare, so it's likely to be used sparingly if you ever see one at all, and you're only going to be using it for the most valuable crafts. It'll probably be one of those things that for most people, if they get a Hinokora's lock, they'll just sell it because the actual price is going to be worth more than using it. And finally, tiered currency is interesting. From what's been shown, it seems that you can use a higher tier of an orb, for example, like a tier 3 exalted orb, which will guarantee that the crafted modifier meets at least a minimum tier of mods, so it cuts out all the bad tiers of mods and leaves you with only the better tiers of mods. This makes currency more precise and powerful at higher levels, rather than just being kind of a flat upgrade, you slam and you pray. Next we have the League expansion. This expansion also introduces the Abyss League. It looks functionally very similar to PoE1, however, the rewards are restructured and changed quite significantly. As you play, you'll encounter cracks that split open in the ground. After you kill all the normal enemies near these cracks, a large opening will form, releasing a big wave of abyssal monsters. The abyssal monsters that spawn will spawn based on the number and type of enemies you killed before, like around the cracks, which is interesting. They did mention a few things like they interact with other mechanics in the map. Like they noted that if you kill a rogue exile near it, then they will spawn a specific kind of cool abyssal rogue exile lich type character. And if you kill an essence monster, they'll spawn a special essence monster type thing. It looks very interesting. Abyss also comes with its own crafting systems, which functionally, they look very, very similar to Veil mods from Path of Exile 1. The odd thing is that in the last League of PoE1, the unveiling process was streamlined to be way faster and way more convenient, but in PoE2, the Abyss system feels like a step backwards. So to access the abyssal crafting options, it looks like you have to travel to a specific separate area and then do like a big animation and go through a whole rigmarole just to get an unveil, rather than just doing it on the spot. Personally, I find that kind of clunky. It interrupts the flow of mapping and or just crafting in general. And it's also surprising to see that they've added the friction here when in PoE1 they just smoothed it out. Like they just changed it. Maybe it'll feel better when I see like the rewards and how often I actually have to go to this other place to like do my abyssal crafting, as it were. But right now it feels more tedious than it probably should be. Endgame is also getting some changes. We're getting 25 new maps. Each has its own monsters, bosses, some unique objectives as well. One thing they added, like they're going to have the ability to have like a little thing that'll spawn in the map. You just click it and it just spawns a boss. That seemed really cool. On top of that, pinnacle encounters have been adjusted. Previously, if you wanted to unlock the Atlas Tree points for pinnacle bosses, you had to defeat the boss directly. Now, the first 2 points that you get for each tree, you get much, much easier. You won't need to actually fight the boss to unlock them, they'll simply be available by progressing the Atlas. Essentially, like for instance, the first Delirium you do, you will just also get the 2 Delirium points. That's only for the first 2 points, however. All of the later points you still require to actually beat the boss. but it'll lower the entry point and friction to the end game, because a lot of players, particularly newer players, they kind of reach that point, and it's a really hard wall to beat the boss before you get any points investing into the strategy. This allows you to invest into the strategy a little bit before you even have to fight the pinnacle boss, so that should be just a better change all round. Alright, finally we have the trading improvements. One of the most player requested changes is finally here. We have asynchronous trading. So here's how it works. Players will be able to list their items for trade through an in-game NPC, and those items will remain available for purchase even if you go offline. So when another player wants to buy the item, the trade is completed automatically, the buyer gets the item and the seller receives the currency the next time they log in and talk to the NPC. It's functionally identical to the way the currency exchange works now. In fact, it's done at the same NPC even. They've changed the currency exchange and they've put it on the same NPC, so you just talk to one dude to do all of your trading. This completely removes the old problem of having to whisper dozens of players, hoping one was online, waiting around to finalize the trade. You can see that I've had some problems with trading. Particularly when you get towards the end of a league, if you're still playing relatively late into the league, nobody answers trade requests at all, ever. It's the same problem in PoE1. They've talked about moving this back to PoE1, I'll be happy when they do. It's amazing. It also means that more common items and crafting bases should be able to circulate more smoothly through the economy, so it should be easier to buy them. Also lets players still set their own prices, so all of that is functionally the same. There is, however, a gold cost associated with trading this way, and this acts as a sink to discourage botting and endless low margin flipping. Since the gold is only obtainable while actually playing the game, it means that bots can't just sit in their hideout making a profit by endlessly buying and reselling small items. Instead, the trades will be more natural and focus on meaningful transactions where players can still buy and sell freely because they're playing normally. If you're doing mapping, you're going to have enough gold to be able to do trading. It's just going to be hard if you're sitting in your hideout trying to flip constantly, which is how bots make most of their money. Asynchronous trading should make gearing up less frustrating and save a huge amount of time without fully automating the market like you would if you were doing an auction house type deal. We'll remain to see how it affects the economy. We could have hyperinflation because people are being able to trade more easily, therefore their access to currency will be higher. I don't think that's going to happen because I think, generally speaking, the kind of people who have a shitload of currency are doing those trades anyway. Like, the reason that poor people are poor is because they don't have the time and or patience to do all the trading. So making that easier should have some deflation effects, but we will see. You never know. It's hard to predict in such cases. But in any case, to wrap up, the Third Edict brings Act 4 and the Interlude chapters for smoother progression into endgame. No more cruel. Fantastic. Big improvements to support gems and crafting. The return of Hinakora's Lock. I love Hinakora's Locks, they're so good. A new Abyss League mechanic, 25 new maps, and much more convenient trading system. This all launches on August 29th with a free weekend running on at the same time. So that first weekend is free to everybody, you don't actually have to pay into the early access, you'll just get it for free. If you've been waiting for Path of Exile 2 to feel a bit more complete, this update might be the time to jump back in, although the fact that they didn't add a new class this time around is probably disappointing to a lot of people, and I imagine that there's probably a lot of people who are going to wait for full release, or at least an expansion that adds a class, because that's a real draw. I think probably more of a draw than an act. It's probably more important for the game that they add the acts in, but I think generally speaking, people are going to get brought back more often by having a new character in, or a new class in, I should say. But with that, thanks for watching. If you found the breakdown helpful, please leave a like. Feel free to subscribe if you aren't already, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye guys.